Welcome to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where we are in pool play of the USA Ultimate College Championships. I'm Emmy Fitzgerald, joined by Kurt Gibson, and we have an exciting matchup of Carleton versus UMass. And this is a bit of a rematch from last year. Kurt, what what type of rivalry do these two teams really have that they bring to the game today?
Well, I think if you start with Carleton, they're one of the most storied programs in all of Ultimate Frisbee. And UMass is really a team that is more on the up and coming, right? They historically have not been a perennial nationals contender, but a team like Carleton, it's a given that they'll be at nationals, and it's a given that they'll probably be at least a quarterfinal team. And this Carleton team is obviously shaping up to be, one of the top contenders for the title.
And in the semifinals last year, the game was decided on double game point. So clearly, both teams are kind of looking out for blood, but they all know each other really well also, just because the sport is so small, playing on teams together. There are several members who are on the from Amherst together. So it should be an exciting matchup.
Yeah, look for Carleton and UMass. Obviously, it's a little bit windy today. It's a kind of a coming in crosswind from behind us here, and so it really won't matter too much probably who's receiving, who starts on defense. But I would look for both teams to try to come out strong. But if I'm the coach here, I'm thinking, hey, we've really got to limit our turnovers early in the game, because if we do that, then we're going to set the tone to say, hey, these guys are here for real. These guys are not here to make mistakes, and if you set the tone that way, that'll be a tough thing to turn around if you're on the other side that might be making some more of those mistakes at the beginning of the game.
Exactly. That's definitely what Phil Bowen, the Carleton coach, was touching on at the beginning, knowing that UMass is really known for their strong zone defense. So he was really emphasizing strong zone offense to kind of be able to combat it and not let their zone look get the best of them.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like Carleton, actually, we're trying to see who will pull. It looks like Carleton is pulling to UMass. UMass still getting their 7 on the line.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Carleton comes out at. If they do some sort of a zone, try to make UMass throw a lot of passes. It is pretty gusty out here, so ideally in this type of wind, you're going to want to make the first point to the offensive team to throw a lot of passes, because there's going to be jitters out there. The guys are going to be a little nervous. We're here at the beginning of nationals, and they've come in from far away. Yeah, I would make them throw a lot of passes on this first point. See if you can steal a break that way.
And you know a thing or two about college championships, being a college champion yourself.
Yeah, 2006, University of Florida. We were able to take down Wisconsin in a tight match, actually in Columbus, Ohio, not too far away. But yeah, it was a great win. Let's just say that. And a long time ago.
Well, plenty of teams looking for that same victory. Carleton will start on offense. UMass in a person look. On the far sideline, working it up. Swinging around, that's hanging in the air.
That was a nice dump pass into the wind. That type of throw right there that came off the sideline, that is a very difficult throw to throw, and you got to have a lot of confidence to make one of those throws, especially in this wind. Usually a lot of these young guys out in college usually don't have those types of throws at this level, but you look at a team like these two right here, you expect a few guys to be able to make those types of throws.
And layout bid, but Wolf Landau manages to keep it. Carleton's working it up. Birdsong. And that's a score. I believe that was Dylan Lanier with the reception.
What happened here, UMass came down in what looked almost like a junky zone, but they were just really playing far off of Carleton. they were running a side stack towards the high side of the field and really poaching off. I mean, there was guys that I saw here on the close side of the sideline about 20 yards off, and they were really if you're coming down in a man defense like that or kind of a junk look, that means they're probably pretty scared of some of the receivers that Carleton has downfield. And as you saw with Carleton, they almost worked that very much with ease. So they looked very confident in that first point. So we'll look to see if they can continue that throughout the rest of the game.
And that was an offensive point, so Carleton held. It's a game to 15. Half is at 8. And the wind, not a significant debilitating factor, but still playing a factor in the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a side wind. It's almost gusty in different directions at some point, but it's pretty consistent side wind. And you know, typically, like we mentioned at the beginning, you really want to be very careful with some of these early throws early on in the game, because the first team to throw that turnover, you're going to get a score from the other side if they can convert, and then everybody's going to be cheering and roaring because the momentum is now in their favor. And especially in an early pool play game like this, it's not something you want to give up first.
So Carleton checks in the front cone. They're working it up the far sideline. And on the ground, Tanner Johnson is able to catch it, swings around to Raddick. There's the backhand huck, trailing out of bounds. So cut with the opportunity for the first break of the day, but they do have to go the full field.
That was great defense by the cut defender. That number 15, he went all the way from the throwing the dump pass, streaking deep all the way up the sideline. Typically when you're making a dump pass, you're not expecting your offender to go all the way deep, and it was a great defensive play from the Carleton defender.
Carleton swinging it all across the field, now working it up the near side. David O'Day over to Ethan Bloodworth.
There's some confusion from the UMass defenders. They've got to figure out a way to lock down man here, because Carleton essentially got a free all the way up to half field, and if they can convert this is going to be a big momentum swinger to Carleton.
Still working it up this near side, far side. Barely staying in. There's the hammer over top, but the block is good.
It's a tough throw from the sideline. I think that's a throw you probably want to save for a more higher stall count, because Carleton was working it almost with ease up down the fourth sideline, and yeah, they were on the sideline, but hey, work that disc around and get that score. That could be a bit momentum. Oh, here's another turn.
So Carleton with another scoring opportunity. If they convert here, that'll be their first break of the game. Some handler movement in the backfield.
There it is.
O'Day, and there's a break. Joe White score.
That's the exact type of momentum Carleton wanted, and I know UMass wanted too, and you can see everybody's cheering and roaring over there. They knew that that first break of the game was just going to be so critical for the momentum of both teams. Now UMass has got to regroup, probably send some of the same players that they just had on the field again, and do it again in a steep win. So, you know, Carleton looked strong that point. I got to tell you, they looked very strong.
So how do you keep that mental fortitude when you are on the offensive line, having to walk back? You just got scored on to go at it again.
Yeah, it's difficult, right? Because I mean, the biggest thing is you obviously turned it over, but then the other team worked it on you all the way up the field, so you're playing defense, and it's not exactly a fun thing to get scored on as well. So you kind of got the thought of getting scored on, but then also if you made the mistake, you kind of two things that might be wearing on you. But you know what, on that walk back to the line, you know, the thing that I always had was, you know, coach always brought us water. Hey, shake it off, quick pat on the back, and hey, we're ready to go. You know, call the next play and just completely focus on the next point. Because if you still, you know, dwell on the point before, you're going to set yourself up for failure the next point.
Short memories, always really important.
You got to have a short memory.
And that pull landed in.
Yeah, we'll see him take it at the front of the end zone here. Carleton looks like a junkie zone here. Gonna make UMass throw a lot of passes.
So disc checked in. Looking, room underneath. There's Patrick Barron.
I think this is a smart play for Carleton.
And UMass going upwind now, but the wind is around 10 miles an hour. There's the look at the end zone. And intercepted is Eric Taylor.
That was a great D. He was about 8 yards behind his man and took positioning. You know, if I'm the UMass offender, you know, it's easy to say, hey, you got to take positioning there. But in this wind, the wind was coming off the high side of the field where we are, and it can drop pretty quickly there. So the defender made a great play.
Now Carleton going downwind. Flick Huck. I think that will go out of bounds. And there was a receiver on that side of the field, but he slipped and fell. I don't know that he would have made it there.
Yeah, that looked like a tough throw. So that throw came out a little too inside out. If you notice, it went trailing away from where the wind was coming from. And so in a throw like that, if you want to throw deep, a flick where the wind is coming to your left, you've got to throw that essentially relatively flat for it to be a legitimate throw for your receiver to be able to come under.
And now UMass, their throw was too low to the ground. Now Carleton with the disc, half field. Andrew Roy. And skying for that is Bloodworth. He immediately looks for the end zone.
So there's another example of flick that it was outside in, which is a better throw than the inside out going that direction. But what happens is if you have too much angle on it, that wind is going to push the top part of the disc down. And you could see that in a non-windy day, that receiver would have caught that. But with the wind coming off the sideline like it is, that wind just pushed it right down to the ground, and the receiver had no shot at that disc.
So UMass with another opportunity. Bobbling Carleton getting in there to break that up. Another shot for Carleton. Yannick picking up.
So that was a drop by Tanner Johnson, who would, I think they would tell you that he's their star player. And as you can see, you know, that early break has caused a little bit of a mental gap with some of the UMass players, specifically Tanner here, because I mean that shot went right into his chest and he just doinked it.
So Joe White made a strike, cut and catch into the end zone, but a foul was called that involves Tanner Johnson, who you just mentioned, Kurt. So looks like it's contested and will go back.
Yeah, you got to think there's a little bit of frustration right now from Tanner. He just got broken, been multiple turnover points. He's probably thinking, hey, we got to stay close early on this game to beat Carleton. So he's doing everything he can to fight.
Bloodworth over to Taylor, and that is 2 breaks in a row for Carleton. Yannick with the score, spike, and cartwheel.
I think that's the first time I've seen that. I can't lie.
That's not part of your celebration.
No, I don't know if when I was playing, I played between 2004 and 2008, and I don't know if the cartwheel rose around then.
You're a little bit before a cartwheel's time.
Yeah. I think that was before Gabby Douglas and Simone Biles, where everybody saw how cool they can make that from their floor routines. So guess now we're seeing it at the college championships.
It has made it here. Definitely follow along in the conversation using hashtag USAU D1 Champs. You can do that on Twitter. You can post a photo watching the live stream, put that on your Instagram. You can even tag USA Ultimate in your Instagram stories, because that's what everybody's doing these days.
And technology.
I know.
I'll tell you, you can be anywhere, tag anything, write anything you want.
You really can. And this also allows you to stay up to date on everything USA Ultimate. So be sure you follow USAU on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even Snapchat, and YouTube. And I will say, I downloaded the USA Ultimate app recently. It is so easy to use versus, especially when you're at a tournament and you're pulling up the old score reporter website, sometimes can be a little bit hard to read. The app has all the schedules, all the scores updated. Get on that USAU app train.
So if I'm UMass here, we got to get a score. You know, we're down a couple, down 3-0. You got to get your defense out there. So I would say I would expect Carleton to come out another junk, make them throw a couple passes before they transition into man. And with UMass, got to make some completions here and get the disc in the end zone because 4-0, that's going to be a hard thing to come back from. But 3-1 is a big, big difference.
And Ultimate is definitely a game of runs. So Carleton certainly coming out to the first run so far. But UMass taking advantage of the downwind. That pole's hanging. Will go a little bit past half field. Jacob Raddick picking up. Johnson swings over to Grauman. We're familiar with Brett Grauman, his time on Austin Double Wide.
Yep. We actually never played on the same team together, but he was at tryouts frequently when he was just a high schooler. So he's been playing Ultimate for quite some time and has really developed into a very, very solid player. He's always been quick, but you can tell his awareness and spatial awareness on the field is excellent.
And speaking of quick, UMass just really quickly moving that down the field. Bartoli getting the score to prevent another break from Carleton and get their first point on the board.
Yeah, Carleton came down in a man, and they were pretty saggy. I'm not sure if they were trying to stop the huck, you know, or a quick huck score, but I would have come down in a junk zone, make them throw a bunch more passes, you know. You had their offense out there 3 points in a row. You know, Tanner Johnson had made some mistakes. I would have made him beat you, you know. I think UMass, you know, was able to just take advantage of some loose man there from Carleton. So, you know, we'll see what they do next go around, but you know, Carleton in general, outside of that D point, look very, very strong right now, and almost as if there's very limited wind.
A true showcase of a great team, even with windy conditions, making it look like it's not a factor. So Carleton is currently up 2 breaks. They started on offense. Half is at 8. It's a game to 15.
Notice the Carleton guys all holding hands here. I can't speak for the entire history of Ultimate, but I got to think that they took that from the Colombian women's team, Revolution. They're out of Medellin, Colombia, and those were the first Ultimate team that I ever saw hold hands on the line like that. It was to represent unity.
And Carleton giving up a turn. So Grauman picking up.
This would be big if Massachusetts could put it in.
Right outside the end zone. Trying to stay composed, but that shot's out of reach. Carleton trying to huck right away. Birdsong is there. Wolf Landau looking to the end zone.
Oof.
And Carleton holds with a near break opportunity for UMass.
That was a tough break for Carleton. Tough break for UMass there. They had it right on the goal line and threw an easy dump pass away. I mean, that is just something that, you know, if you're going to win nationals, if you're going to beat a top team like Carleton, those are the types of throws that top teams, top players on top teams will make nearly every single time, and throwing that disc away on the end zone, that is inexcusable, you know, in a game like this. Because, I mean, when you've got the disc on the goal line, every single break matters. I mean, that's essentially a 2-point swing right there. The game should be 3-2. Instead, now we're looking at 4-1.
So UMass will be on offense. They're still down by 2 breaks, but to your point, Kurt, they had a near break opportunity themselves.
And, you know, with that one, they weren't even pressured that much. The wind actually had died down. It's picked back up just in the last 30 seconds. The wind had died down. I think he might have been expecting the wind to hold it up a little bit more. But candidly, in that case, you just want to make him the right throw, hit him right in the chest. And he just threw it too out far in front.
So the bouncing pole reset. Swinging over Johnson.
So here's Carleton in a junk look. There it is. There it is. It's exactly what they wanted to do. Make UMass throw a couple more throws than they would want, get them out of their rhythm, and that junk zone look worked perfectly. You know, when you have a junk zone like that and your team has been reeling a little bit, you got some frustration. Those throws that seem easy, that you'd make in practice every single day, just, you know, almost, here's 92 in the same position last time he threw a hammer here, and this is the exact decision that he wanted to make. Just dump it right off the sideline. Now they moved across field, and for an easy goal.
So Carleton with another break. There's Luke Webb.
So you can see 92 made the decision not to throw the hammer that time because of that steep crosswind that we've got here, and instead threw a nice tiny fake and dumped it right across the field, and Carleton was able to score with ease.
A much different result. I wonder if they had some sideline discussions about that decision making.
Well, you know, as a player here, especially at the college championships, you have got to be able to learn and adapt on the fly. You know, every game is different. Obviously, the team you're playing against is different, but the conditions especially can be different and vary from game to game. So sometimes what would work in no-wind situations might not work in a crosswind or, you know, upwind, downwind situation. So you've got to be able to kind of audible and calibrate on the fly. And so, you know, kudos to 92 there. He was able to make that adjustment there and obviously get the score.
We hope you're tuning in. We're glad, actually, if you can hear us, you are tuning in. We're glad you're tuning in to the live stream. Be sure to leave a comment. Let us know you're listening. Let us know where you're watching from, if you're cheering for a specific player. And if you have any questions for Kurt or myself, we will do our best to try and answer those. And that pull did not roll out of bounds, so UMass had to take it, but they managed to get it out of the end zone.
Carleton is playing very loose on their man defense right now, very loose.
Eddie Scott on the far sideline shooting it straight up the field. There's Tanner Johnson straight up the sideline for the score.
Yeah, Carleton's man D was pretty loose there. I think they were just giving UMass a little too much space to make some of the throws, and you know, Tanner Johnson just juking his man and beating him with speed and size. That's, you know, one-on-one matchup. I think you're going to take that all day. Great put by the thrower in that situation to get it to your guy. I mean, you saw Tanner. He had a doink early in the game. You know, his mental focus might have been rattled a little bit. But that's an easy way to get your best player's confidence back, is throwing him a deep puck.
So Carleton still with the 5-2 lead. We're in the first half of play. Plenty of ultimate still to be played. Half is at 8. Final game is to 15. If you're just joining us, I'm Emmy Fitzgerald alongside Kurt Gibson here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where it is sunny and warm, especially for Wisconsin.
Yeah, I live in Chicago, just Just under 2 hours away, and I can tell you this is the nicest day we've had in this area in the last 9 months.
We were in Rockford, Illinois last week, where it was thunderstorms and then in the 40s on Sunday. So this is double the temperature, but just as much fun. UMass looking to get a break, gain back some of the deficit. That pole will go out of bounds. Olsen will take it to the brick mark.
Carleton set up here in a side stack. Really what they want to do here is isolate throwers. Excuse me, isolate the receivers, and the thrower they just misread each other right there. This could be an opportunity for UMass to bring the disc down the field and bring it within 2.
So UMass tapping it on the far sideline. Will swing it off the line. That is hanging, and Carleton will take advantage, and UMass doesn't get the break once again.
You see the importance of being able to throw a dump backhand in the wind. You know, Carleton, you can see the Carleton marker right there. He did a great job of turning on his on the thrower there to try to make him throw more of an outside-in pass. And had a long mark there, and the thrower a little shorter than him. He really had to extend to make that dump pass. And sometimes when you make that offender step out farther than he's used to, that throw comes out a little wonky sometimes, and you end up put a little too much outside in, and that's exactly what happened, especially in this wind. You throw the bottom part of the disc too much, the wind takes it up, and you end up getting a poor throw and a turnover, causing for another Carleton score.
So timeout called on the field. And we have folks tuning in from all over. Some from Austin, Texas. Others from Minnesota and UMass. These games are streamed on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube.
Yep. I got to think if you're a UMass fan right now, you're probably yelling at the screen right now to get your team pumped up right now, because they're going to need to put this one in to stay in the game. You know, Carleton right now, definitely looking confident, definitely looking very poised. You know, they look like an experienced team, and clearly they all look like they're in great shape. They've been running very, very well. You know, you take away a few offensive miscues just on that last point, and then on one of the other D points earlier in the game. I mean, they're playing a relatively great game overall. I think if you're UMass here, you got to look for Tanner early, get him the disc downfield, and look for an opening that hopefully Carleton gives you.
So lots of blade on that pole. It landed in, rolls out.
Yeah, what the puller was doing there was, you know, put the bottom of the disc facing the wind so that it'll carry it high, but then it'll shoot down really quickly. And what they're trying to do is essentially not give the guy that's catching the pull an opportunity to start their pull play in the field of play. So right there, they had to take it at the front of the end zone, essentially giving the Carleton defense perfect time to set up and plenty of time to, you know, adjust to what UMass is looking to do offensively.
So a call on the field. The disc will be checked live, back into play. UMass still very much in their backfield. Grauman.
It's a good throw by Brett right there. That's a tough throw. You see Carleton playing underneath on Brett right there, forcing him to go deep. And some of the others, they're playing behind him, forcing him under. You could see if they could take advantage of that.
So Barron counts getting higher. He will find a reset. in Dylan Monty. And just some miscommunication, very uncharacteristic from this UMass squad.
Yeah, it's another one by Tanner. It wasn't necessarily a doink like last time, but clearly had a miscommunication with his thrower.
There's the shot right away. Luke Webb is there. His second goal of the game.
So just for the folks at home, you can see with that offender, he threw another flick huck from the near sideline where we are. The wind was coming off of his left side, and he actually threw that at a great angle because the disc was able to essentially come down at more of a normal rate than the two throws previous, where one guy threw an inside out, which ended up out of bounds. The wind took that one, and one where it was two outside in, where the wind pushed the top part of the disc down, giving the receiver no chance at that. So that was actually took him the third try, but three different throwers, but they were able to finally throw a nice flick hug perfectly to the receiver in stride.
Test and learn, and definitely seeing that improvement so far. So Carleton going up to a 5-goal advantage over UMass here in the first half of play. If Carleton can get another break here, they will take half. However, UMass has been very close several times and just haven't converted as much as they would have liked.
Yeah, team like Carleton is just extremely strong. You look at UMass, clearly, they know they've got a great team opposite them. You got to take advantage of those opportunities that you have, like that disc on the goal line. Would have been a much different game at potentially 4-3 rather than 5-2. So we'll see what UMass comes out. Looks like Carleton's in almost like a 4-man cup here, a very loose cup.
So Grauman with the disc, that trap going overhead. The second attempt is there. This is Caswell. And hand block, though.
This must be frustrating for some of the UMass defenders on the sideline, watching the offense not being able to move the disc effectively. Carleton has had great success with the zone looks and junky looks with UMass. I would continue to go after it, but they're probably going to fall into man here.
So UMass back with the disc, an overthrow from Carleton. Working it, and a bobble. Maybe that looked like he was too focused on the next pass than catching it, maybe.
Yeah, it almost looked slightly behind him, but you know what? That's a very catchable disc, and in this wind, you've got to come down with that.
Timeout called for Carleton. Good strategic move.
Yeah, this is for half. You know what? Take your time out, gather yourself. Clearly, UMass is reeling right now, and if you're Carleton, I think that's a smart play. Gather yourself, take a breath, and close out the half. Here it could be 8-2, which would be very, very strong for Carleton. Getting back to that huck throw that from Carleton last point. One of the things that you could say about what makes Carleton so great is that those were three different guys making those flick huck passes with the wind coming off their left side. If you're a player that's watching that on the sideline, yes, before games you will practice your throws to kind of calibrate where the wind's coming from. But sometimes when you're in game, when the wind changes, sometimes you don't have time to recalibrate the throws that you have to understand where the wind is coming from. And so kudos to those Carleton guys to kind of understand, hey, here's where the wind coming from. Here's where my two previous, players who I didn't make the throw, they kind of had challenges with that flick. They were able to adjust without actually making that throw. So, I think that's just one of the things that you could say, Carleton is doing that sets them apart and why they've been so successful.
So the disc is live and checked back in. UMass coming on a zone of their own here, kind of trying to give Carleton a taste of their own medicine. Scuba around. Yannick finds upline. Give and go. Breaking free on the far sideline.
Yeah, UMass came in what looked like a four-man cup, and then they almost switched to what looked like a marker with three guys behind them. Um, how you typically beat that four-man cup is through the middle of the field, and they look a little loose here. Carleton, just such strong throwers. You know, no matter who gets it, seems to be able to, easily work it through that loose cup.
And despite the bid attempt, Adam Thorne manages to catch that disc, the 6'2 junior, and Carleton will take half, 8-2. Certainly not the start that UMass was hoping for. So if you are Tina Booth, the UMass head coach, what do you really tell your team at halftime?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if there's a specific, message you got to send to your team down 8-2. I mean, this is not a position you want to be in for UMass, right? I mean, overcoming 6 points just to tie it is going to be a difficult feat. But you know what? I think the one thing that UMass might have on their side is that there's still wind. So in general, in a windy type game, it is more of an equalizer. So if a team does have better overall throwers than you do, or better overall athletes, you can use the wind to help overcome that. If you've got a few throwers that can really make good throws, solid decisions, and maybe a few good receivers that can make some big plays, coming down with some long passes to steal a few points. But you know what? I don't know if we've seen enough from UMass today to show that that's going to be advantage for them. So, I got to think that, if you're UMass right now, that's a tough huddle that I wouldn't want to be in right now. I can tell you, in 2008, we were up 8-2 on Carleton at halftime in the semifinals, and you know what? I think the score ended up being 15-3, but it's tough to come back from a loss like this, or excuse me, from a deficit like this.
Well, we hope that UMass fares better than Carleton back then, but we are glad that you're joining in on this conversation. We are going to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll have the second half of play, Carleton versus UMass. You're watching the USAU College Championships presented by Fulcrum Media. welcome back to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We are at halftime in the first day of pool play at the USAU College Championships, where currently Carleton is leading UMass 8-2. I'm Emmy Fitzgerald alongside Kurt Gibson, and you will hear me for 11 games on USAU throughout the weekend. So I hope you're ready for all kinds of awesome ultimate live streams from Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. We will have guest color analysts throughout this time. Joining us for a few games today is Kurt Gibson. And Kurt, you are no stranger to college championships, to club championships, to world championships.
Yes, I
Not
guess
to
so.
make you feel weird about it or anything.
Yes, well, I played at I played in the college championships our first year at University of Florida. We made it. Florida made it for the first time. Made it to nationals in 2006, and we were able to take home the title that year, beating Wisconsin, who has another storied program, very much like Carleton. And then finished in the semis in 2007, and then lost to Wisconsin in the finals in 2008. We actually beating Carleton, leading them 8-2 at half in the semifinals. So, yeah, been to quite a few college nationals in my day.
And
So it's great to be back.
what have you seen kind of evolve throughout the years observing college nationals?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I've been able to observe, especially here in the past couple of years versus when I was playing, is that there's been an infusion of youth talent, especially in the grade schools, elementary, middle, and then of course high schools across the country. And there are so many more programs that have been developed, and now high school kids in many areas of the country, some more so than others, like the Northwest, Northeast, are doing tremendously well with it. But creating their own programs and playing since some of these kids have been playing since they were in elementary and middle school, right? Where back when I was in college, a lot of the guys, had played high school sports, or maybe, played college soccer and wasn't as motivated to play anymore. And so a lot of them have limited disc skills. And so I think the biggest thing that you'll see is that, even within the last 10 to 15 years, the disc skills up and down the roster, from, your top guy to your bottom guy, are overall a lot better, right? So, when I was playing, you had great athletes. Let me tell you, some of the guys are still playing today on the club league. But, I think the biggest difference is the level of disc skills from all of the players.
Exactly. Something that we've really noticed so far today in the wind, definitely playing a factor. Carleton coming out on offense right away, knocking on the door of the red zone, and they go to a quick score to start the second half. That's Eric Taylor.
Yeah, it's just a tough break for UMass right there. That was almost a silly turnover. Really didn't need to happen, but unfortunately, they turned it right over in the end zone. If you're going to beat a team like Carleton, you've really got to make them beat you, make them throw a lot of passes. I mean, any team can put it in on the end zone right there. So I think, if I'm UMass right now, I've got to put together a string of throws, get a score, get your defense back out on the field.
And we did have a question from Facebook. Is that Tina Booth coaching the UMass team? And yes, in fact, that is Tina, storied ultimate coach, extremely knowledgeable from Massachusetts. She runs a camp as well. We were talking about it before the game, and she hires coaches to work at her camp. Some of them are on the Carleton squad. So the sport is just very small. There's a lot of overlap. Kurt, I'm sure you had a lot of times players you played against in college, you played with in club, and vice versa.
Yeah, I've had quite a few. I mean, geez, some of the guys that, were our biggest rivals. I mentioned Wisconsin. We beat them in the finals in 2006. And some of the guys that you kind of loved to hate, you know, back then have recently been my teammates on some of the teams that I played with. You know, it's wild. And so, you know, you know, you say oh, I hate those guys, you know, but you know what? The reason why you say that is because you actually respect them for how good they are and for how hard they work. You know, you could tell that some of the top programs back, you know, when I was playing really put in great work, but you know, you can tell teams like this, especially Carleton here. I mean, you could tell they put in the work. They're all in great shape. You know, they all have dedicated so much time inside, literally, because it's so cold in Minnesota during the wintertime. You know, whether it's on the track or, you know, out on the practice field, you know, just getting themselves in great shape. So, you know, it's something that you just have to respect.
And Carleton looking for another break opportunity. Joe White at midfield, but that was a hand block on that around.
Was that a hand block? It almost looked like he threw that right in the ground.
Maybe we're giving too much credit to the defense.
I think he threw that one right in the ground, and I got to tell you, you know, in a wind like that, the wind is coming at his face. When you make that dump throw, he threw that before his right foot was set. So when he made that pass, was he going to make that? No, out of bounds. But he made that before he pivoted down, and it's just so hard to make a right throw that'll be a completion if you're still moving.
So UMass having some similar issues, but just on a different throw. So gives Carleton another opportunity. Call on the field.
If I'm Carleton here, I'm just going to throw it down the field and make UMass work to avoid something like that, turning it over, giving UMass a very, very short field.
So UMass now in their red zone, desperately needing a score at this point, tracking it in, and that is a goal. That was Elijah Mishkin.
It was a good read by him that just sat up a little bit, but Elijah made a great play on that. You know, again, I got to go back to that strategic decision by Carleton. I know you're up, you know, 8-2, but I just got to think that put that disc down the field, make UMass, make them work, you know. But hey, when you got a lead like that, you can afford to make some of those mistakes. But you know, hopefully, won't come back to haunt them.
And this is pool play here in the first day of college championships. Carleton, #1 in their pool. They are the reigning champions. The UMass is the 8th seed, but they are second in the pool. Rounding out is Stanford, Auburn, and Northwestern. Stanford having a good past couple of seasons as well.
Look at Carleton on the line here. You can see they're holding hands. Got to go back. It's the Colombian women's team, Revolution, from Medellin, Colombia. They were the first ones that I saw to do that, to represents unity, you know, team right before you get out on the field to battle. The Colombian women's team, Revolution, from the small city of Medellin, the second largest city in Colombia. They actually, I think they've qualified for the World Championships, Ultimate Club Championships in 2 months here in Cincinnati this coming year. And I think they've got a real great shot at winning the World Championship. They've just got a ton of great young talent. All the girls on that team are fast.
They won the U.S. Open this past August.
They won the U.S. Open, beating some of the top women's club teams in the United States. So, you know, if you can beat the club teams in the United States, I can tell you you're gonna have a great shot at winning the club title.
And UMass with an interception, hoping to get a break, and they do. That's Grauman to LaRue. To get their 3rd point on the board. 4th point on the board. And taking advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, you know, that's kind of one you wanted for UMass, right? If I'm UMass, that's one I wanted. Almost kind of like a freebie, like Carleton has had 2 of those thus far that UMass gave them. So it's nice to kind of get one of those back, and you know, hopefully they can get 1 or 2 more of those freebies back and get within striking distance. You know, 5 points is still a little far, But, candidly, if I'm Carleton, we've been up, my college days, we've been up on teams by quite a bit. But you know what? You never want to let up on the gas, because if you do, sometimes these teams, especially in these windy conditions, they can steal a couple, and then you end up in a dogfight. And that's not something you want to do, because this is a long tournament, Emmy. It's a long tournament, and if you have a chance to close teams out, you got to do it.
Exactly. So pool play starts today. It continues tomorrow into Saturday. The first rounds of the bracket play start the latter rounds of Saturday. Then going into Sunday and Monday, those semifinals and finals will also be available live on ESPNU, the ESPN app, and ESPN3. Certainly both teams were there last year, hoping they have that shot. Carleton so far with a good showing. Putting up the huck right away, 3-on-1. And even with the body, Henry Fisher made the reception. However, I believe there was a foul call that was taken back.
Oof, that is a tough call right there.
Actually, the foul call, I think, was no contest.
Looked like an offensive foul that was not contested. Oof. That was a good I thought that looked like a good box out by the offender.
And that is sailing.
Callahan.
Callahan avoided. Caswell, Grauman, he's inside their team, the opposing end zone. There's Barron with the disc. Popping up in the air, flying overhead. Birdsong straight over to Olsen.
You can see
Olsen
Carleton there. Carleton is just doing a great job pressuring the dumps. They're making it really difficult for Massachusetts to get any type of rhythm offensively. I mean, almost all these dump throws are contested or, causing a high stall count. And, in a win like this, again, we keep referring to the win, but it does play such a big factor in these dump. I mean, you just saw that last pass that was a turnover. What would be a very easy throw in a no-win situation, now UMass is playing defense because that outside-in throw popped up, and they were able to get a D.
That swing pass proving difficult for both teams, but Carleton will go up 6. It's a game to 15.
I'm going to tell you right now, I mean, those dump passes that some of them are being completed, some of them are not. We saw early Carleton made some great dump passes to get it off the sideline. For you kids that are watching at home, you're looking to play at the college championship someday. You're looking to play Club Ultimate on a top team. Those are the types of throws that will keep you from getting on the field or will separate you from the rest of the pack if you're on the field, because those are just throws that take a lot of confidence, but they'll take a lot of practice outside of either a normal team practice or games to perfect. You can never practice those enough, because as you can see, those are where most of the turnovers are coming from.
UMass on offense. Looks like Barron was trying to set up for the huck, but swings it around instead. Raddick over to Merowitz McMahon. Sky and grab for Barron. There's that shot. And it looked almost like the second attempt was going to be there, but the disc fell to the ground too soon. Injury called on the field.
Yeah, that disc, again, it was a very high flick that sat in the air. Not something that, was that Joe White that threw that? Yeah, that was Joe. Not the typical throw that you would want. He had a receiver that had some steps, but that thing hung up there a little too much for him.
So now Carleton will pick up. Had an interesting question from the live stream. So was Carleton wearing their whites or their darks? They are wearing their whites, but we're putting that in air quotes because Gray is the most ambiguous color in Ultimate.
I think that's a neither answer.
Inside
See, that is a
backhand.
great throw right there. Great inside out backhand.
And Yannick looking for Webb. There's Johnson.
That was great. Yannick had 2 great passes, a great upline dump cut, juking his man, and then a poor deep pass. But when you're up by 6 points here, you can try to steal a couple of those. Tanner had a guy, 21, was wide open. Patrick Barron had his man beat by 15 yards there, and Tanner didn't even look at him. Those are the kind of ones that you want to steal when you're down by so many points here.
So Barron will reset to Scott.
Got an opening. Another poor throw. Jack Staples was open by about, again, 12 yards, and they just threw the disc straight in the air. Some poor huck passes by UMass. They've got guys open that are getting separation from the Carleton defenders, but you know what? The offense has been out there quite a bit. They've played a lot of points, and fatigue, you can imagine, is starting to set in. So this is where the mental game really comes into play, you know, frankly, for both teams, but UMass, if you want to get back into it, you've got to kind of focus in on some of those throws and not rush them. You can see they see their man open by 10, 12 yards, and they rush the throw, and it ends up being a poor pass, which could have given them 2 potential scores here.
So Carleton with another opportunity. Joe White shooting for the end zone. He overthrows Eric Taylor.
That was a nice pass, though. You know, at least the angle that it came out was slightly outside in, which is the way you want to throw it there, just a little too hard. But you know, I think Carleton, those are the ones that you know, you're okay with.
And UMass looking to make a completion right away, but they are unable to.
Joe White just ran right by him right there. Right by him.
And this is a turf field where the teams are playing, so as it gets closer to midday, that picks up on the field too. Another floating huck.
Look for Tanner to come down with this one.
And
nice D by Brett, the shortest guy in the stack, makes the play.
Timing is everything, as they say.
If I'm Tanner, I'm going deep here. You gotta make a play for your team here. He's looking to come back to the disc. You can tell he's tired. But as the best player here, here's where you gotta come through. There's a multi-turnover point. You know, we got Tanner standing here in the back of the stack. Here it goes. There it goes.
Some blade. And there he is with the catch.
That was the right play. It was a poor throw, but honestly, that was the right play. You go to your best player on everybody's tired. You can see everybody's hands are on their knees, especially on the UMass side. Get it up to your best player and hope for something good. Oof, another great defense.
So Grauman looking for the end zone. And there's a roll, but observer rules out to the side. That's a tough shot too, up line.
Yeah, again, I'm going to refer to the wind. You know, he threw that disc a little outside in, and when you're on that side of the field, you just don't have a lot of space to work with. There's not as much room for the disc to float out into, because the sideline is essentially a wall or barrier protecting you from that. And when you make that type of throw, you've got to know that you got to put enough blade on it where it comes back into play for your offender to be able to make a play on it. If I'm UMass here, you've got to figure out a way to get this one in and get off the field if you're going to stay in this game.
So multiple possession points so far. Grauman checks in and overthrows. His defender tried, or his teammate tried on the second attempt, but Jason Raddick is not able to get there.
See, I think this is a little bit fatigue and a little bit experience slash decision making, because Brett's a right-hand thrower and he just threw a very quick, high left-handed throw and just essentially overshot him. He should have caught it, but you know, Brett, you're one of the captains, you're one of the stars of this team. You got to make it easier for your guy to make a catch. You know, everybody's tired. You, as one of the leaders of this team, need to set your offensive receiver up for success. And that was one that, you know, you would argue, hey, should have been caught. But again, everybody's tired. Everybody's been running. It's been a long point. You gotta be able to make that catch.
And another interception on, guess what? A swing, crossfield swing. UMass will call a timeout. And these marathon points, granted, Carleton is up by 6, but what does it do for the first game? It's the first game of the tournament for a team to really overcome mentally through these marathon points.
You know, it's very difficult to overcome, but usually what you could say is, especially in a close game, usually the team that wins these marathon points usually ends up winning the game. Now, this is a different scenario because, I mean, Carleton's up by so many, but you know, these are the types of the points that honestly can make or break a tournament. I mean, right now, the UMass offensive line has been out there for what almost seems like 8 minutes, maybe more, and it's been quite a long point already. I mean, let's say they do score this, and the defense lets Carleton score in 3, 4, 5 passes. Now they're right back on the field.
Right.
And what if they have a longer point? So these types of points, Carleton is just, you know, sitting here on the sideline saying, great. Hopefully they keep turning it over, because the longer this game, the longer the point goes, the shorter amount of time that UMass is going to have to make a comeback into this game.
So UMass has the disc. They're on offense to check in. Solomon, Merowitz, McMahon will have the disc first. UMass in a vertical stack going downwind.
Yeah, look for Tanner here to cut off one of the first throwers. He's in the back of the stack.
And overthrowing.
Out on the field. Brett's not out on the field. And they touched that, so that is going to come in at the back of the end zone. This is not the position you want to be in for UMass. If I'm Carleton, I am poaching all over the place to try to force a turnover here. They should be playing underneath their guy, make UMass beat you.
And another swing, but there's teamwork. Keep that alive. Inside. Donadio over to Schmidt. And a turnover. Carleton in the red zone.
It's another poor dump pass. That is the second one we've seen as many points from UMass going on the downwind side. So when you're throwing that downwind dump pass, because it's a crosswind, so although they are throwing to the sideline, it is downwind, and you've got to be able to get the frisbee higher, more shoulder level from a release point, and slight outside in angle. You saw both those times those guys threw their dump passes, it was low, it was a little more angled than it should be, and really didn't allow for the offender, the dump, to make a play on it. So in those downwind dump pass situations, you've got to create a little bit more air under it, otherwise it's just going to be impossible to catch.
So Carleton will get their 12th point of the game. Game is to 15. In this pool play round on day 1. The wind playing more of a factor than really either team would like, but Carleton taking advantage of the miscues, especially in the first half.
Yeah, in the second half here, we've just seen much longer points. Both teams making mistakes on both sides, but you know, if you're Carleton, you're okay with that because it's just going to prevent UMass from getting back in the game.
So UMass taking it from the brick mark. Jared Scheinberg checks in. UMass in that vertical stack, really looking for a deep shot. Far sideline is LaRue. Looks for the inside flick. Went past about 3 different defenders.
Yeah, Carleton did a great job there. So what they're doing is, especially on that far sideline where the wind is trapping them, they're making those dump passes extremely difficult. And that mark went all the way around, almost forcing him to try to throw that inside-out flick and preventing a backhand around dump and just making it really hard for that Massachusetts thrower to do anything. And they got the turn. Great work.
Carleton approaching the red zone.
That was a nasty throw by Andrew Roy right there, an inside-out flick.
And another inside-out flick. Dylan Lanier with the goal.
See, those are the types of throws, Emmy, that 15 years ago you wouldn't see from up and down the roster from every team. Now you look at the, Carleton, top-ranked team here. Those are throws that a lot of the guys will make. Not necessarily consistently, but have the confidence to make because, a lot of them have been playing the game for quite some time.
And you talk with different areas of the country with strong programs like Seattle or the Triangle in North Carolina, and they really say that the middle school division is a strong point of focus for them to build up their youth program. And you see, Seattle so perennially dominant. North Carolina the same way. Minnesota as well.
Yeah, you see a lot of the good club teams now are in areas where they have quite a bit of high school and middle school programs and just general youth programs across the country. And so if you're leading a club team now and you want to be good, develop some longevity with the program, one of the things that you're going to have to think about is figuring out ways to get engaged with some of the youth there, building programs, running some clinics, or just generally getting engaged with even some of the school systems, do some clinics and gym classes. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get involved from a coaching perspective at the club level, but in general, that's the wave of the future. If you're going to have some longevity in the program, is get some of that youth infused talent, and we're seeing a lot here in the college championships.
And if you're a college program as well, maybe consider attending your respective state's high school state championship. Check out where kids are going to school. To really build up the program. Carleton, certainly a storied program. They bring in players from all across the country because of Ultimate. You don't even see that very often in Ultimate, where players come in from all over the place specifically for this sport.
Yeah, I know when I was in high school, one of the first things one of the guys told me was, hey, you need to go to Carleton. So I started playing as a senior year in high school, and even 2003, early 2000s, folks knew about Carleton. If you knew about Ultimate, you knew about Carleton because they were just such a perennial nationals contender and powerhouse.
UMass really growing in the past few seasons.
Yeah, and you could say part of that is because of some of the youth programs that are being conducted in the Northeast. A lot of the local kids are now, attending school locally, and that's why UMass is, one of the reasons why UMass has started to change its program around.
So Merowitz McMahon has that score there for UMass. They will get their 5th goal of the game. You were talking about youth programs at the U.S. Open YCC division. Buddha, the Boston Ultimate Disc Association from the youth program, they always have a strong, really strong showing. And then that really translates over into the adult divisions. So the moral is, the more you can have a disc in your hand and throw and play, the younger you are, the better it is. But you're not too old to play. It's still fun to play.
You're never too old to play. I tell myself that every day.
Same, same.
Yeah, you know, if you're UMass right now, right? You're obviously wanting to contend for a title here. You're down here in pool play to Carleton. At this point, you're down 8. It's going to be near impossible task to come back, but you want to play the rest of this game as if, you know, it were 0-0, because at this point, hey, you still got other pool play games that you've got to participate in, and if you're gonna carry any type of momentum into the next game, you want it to be positive, because that can change, you know, the outcome of your finish at the tournament, but also the rest of the day, because if you come in slow or, you know, dragging your feet against your next opponents, that could, again, you could start off in a hole and then just cause the entire team to work that much harder to score and get breaks and all of the above, and, you know, then just make it more difficult for the later days in the tournament to compete in, you know, long games.
So that disc is popped up, intercepted. Carleton will reset. There's 27 going straight for the end zone. That's Harry Wolf Landau.
Yeah, it looked like he was going to be right open underneath, but he just took off, and they found him in the end zone. Nice cut by Harry. Just a freshman. You got to think that a lot of those young guys, you know, you teach them when they come out, hey, if you get wide open in the field, you just cut to the end zone, and we'll get one of the experienced guys to throw it to you. So kudos to him for making that play.
So with Carleton with 14, if they are able to get a break here, that will be game. But UMass will start with the disc. We've seen, though, even though these are both good teams, multiple possession points so far, which is fairly uncharacteristic at a college championship level.
Well, win plays a big factor in that. I mean, gosh, you take away the dump passes, the poor dump decisions that were made, and there's not too many turnovers in this game, right? And I think that's credit mostly to the Carleton defense for putting a ton of pressure, especially on the dumps and downfield, just making it difficult for the UMass receivers to get open and get the space that they are normally used to. So it's one of those things that when you've got such tight coverage downfield, it forces you to make throws that you wouldn't normally make. It's a nice blade pull. See if it stays in. That one cleared the fence over there.
So they will take it to the brick mark. UMass hoping for a score here to keep the game alive in this first round of pool play.
They're doubling Tanner right here. Just clogging the lanes.
Immediate huck.
Yep.
With that double team, that did leave Gregory Oreste open. So now Johnson on the goal line. Trying to shoot it straight through, but Carleton was just swarming.
Again, the themes are just continuing to stick out. Tight dump defense. Tanner had nowhere to go with the frisbee. You could tell his frustration there. I mean, they made the right. Carleton played smart defense, poaching off of him at the beginning, double teaming him. You know, UMass took advantage, but just unable to convert on the end zone line.
So Carleton, if they score here, that's game.
And Carleton right here looking almost like they did right at one of the first few points of the game, just working it up the far sideline.
Johnson had eyes on that the entire time. UMass knowing they need to score quickly to have any chance. Multiple breaks in a row.
That was a nice inside-out break backhand.
On this near sideline, looking to reset.
That was Elijah, made a great pass. Look for him to do it again here, because these guys aren't getting open. Nice inside-out backhand again. He's got a nice, pretty backhand in the wind.
And UMass is able to hold, keeping the game alive. I believe that was Gregory Oreste who caught initially that huck at the beginning of the point.
Yeah, it's just, you almost wonder if, you know, UMass's offensive plan could have been altered a little bit. They looked pretty solid. Elijah, especially with some of those IO backhands going up the field. Carleton has been really pressuring the dumps, forcing the handlers to go upfield. And when that happens, sometimes if you're in the front of the stack there and one or two of the stack, you can kind of fake going back to the frisbee or the thrower and then kind of cut up blind. If you've got a thrower like Elijah that can make some of those inside-out backhands, you can almost work the disc up the field just doing that, and it's almost impossible to stop until Carleton makes an adjustment.
So UMass will pull to Carleton. If Carleton is able to score here, then they will take the game. But we have not had a point without any turnovers in a lot of points.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things that, again, the win can be an equalizer, or it can cause one team to just really connect. And Massachusetts here has not been able to do that. Here they've got a four-man cup and pretty loose. So,
and hand block, a break opportunity for UMass.
That was definitely a hand block, Emmy.
We will credit the block to UMass there, mark it on the stat sheet. And bobbling but caught, and the receiver slips and falls.
Just a sequence of events. The far side of the field threw a great backhand dump pass, which is not like we've seen many times in this game. And then the two swing passes after that were just quick and behind the receiver.
Grauman with the interception, but then tangled up. His defender, Henry Fisher, was hoping to get the deep shot, but Carleton working with that small ball. It's hanging, but by himself, Chris Padilla is able to get it. Inside, every reception is taking effort.
Yeah, it looks pretty hard out there for those guys. I mean, everything seems difficult right now, but Carleton's about to put it in. There they go. That's the game.
And Harry Wolf Landau with the game-winning score for Carleton to win the first game of pool play in their pool, men's division. They will defeat UMass 15-6. So if you're Carleton, yes, they won by a handy margin, but there's a lot of frisbee left to be played in the tournament, and there are some adjustments that they could make.
Yeah, I mean, Carleton played a great game. UMass obviously struggled mightily in the wind. You know, you look at just even that last point, right? Yes, Carleton's up by a ton, so you're a little more lax than you should be, but I mean, those are the type of turnovers, especially on the dump passes for both teams, that, you know, once you start getting into the semifinals and the finals, those are the things that can cost you the game. So you want to kind of tighten some of those up and be a little smarter. I just couldn't help but thinking on that last point is that, you know, back, in 2006, 2007, 8, when, we were in some of these pool play games late. I mean, if we got that turn, we would just cycle around a few of our players and just make solid passes. Yeah, it might have been difficult, but you've got to be laser focused on some of those dumb passes, because each one of those turnovers, especially even now in the tournament, but especially in the bracket play, that's going to it can cost you games, So you've just got to really tighten some of that up and tighten it up quick, even if you're Carleton. I know they played great today. Offensively, they were solid. They were moving it very, very well. But in general, especially towards the latter half of this game, tighten some of those things up, because if you're in a close game, that could cost you.
Exactly. True words, as Carleton will take their first game of pool play on Friday. Coming up next in our live stream, we will have the Carleton women's team taking on Western Washington here in Milwaukee. But for now, we will sign off. For Kurt Gibson, I'm Emmy Fitzgerald. You're watching the USA Ultimate College Championships presented by Fulcrum Media.